well, I said the number of people that have been excluded by the release of the free market, I said, is very much more than the few thousand people who were involved in riots. And I said, I'm not in any way justifying things like arson or potential deaths or whatever that happened in relation to this. But if you exclude something like between the bottom 10 to 15% of the population, you're talking in literally millions of people, 8 to 10 million people. And if you create a situation where those people have nothing but debt and literally nowhere to go, you will produce subcultures of anger and violence and all kinds of despair, and a lot of suicide, a lot of drugs, a lot of alcohol, all kinds of terrible, terrible social problems, but masses of anger. And if you combine that with a situation in which you have almost promised, or you have promised education for deprived groups or for groups that have previously been excluded, particularly black groups in this country, and if you say that these people can have education and you start to allow people to go in large numbers to places like London Met, and things like, you know that there were more black students in London Met than in the whole of the Russell Group universities, that's the top 20 all put together, and that you then say, well, now it's all gone. All of this is now being stopped, then of course you're going to generate a huge amount of anger and a huge amount of frustration. And I don't know if any of you saw the extraordinary piece done by Sky Television, which was called Looters. Did any of you see that? The fascinating piece, and I mean Sky got into all kinds of trouble for doing it, and masses of complaints, and actually took it off their website to get. But it was a half-hour report which they interviewed 3 young guys from who had been involved in the looting and who wanted to speak, and they were masked and their identities were hidden. But it's a fascinating piece. You can get it on YouTube, called Looters. And they spoke, and these boys were being asked the normal kind of media type questions. Don't you feel embarrassed? Isn't this awful? Shouldn't you be working, going out and getting a job and learning things? And the guy said, look, we went through all that. We went through the education. We got our qualifications. We got our A-levels. And we took our CVs out. And we got dressed up and went around all the places looking for jobs. And they said, you know the place that we did? And they were talking about this. The one shop we went to, a big electrical shop, they wouldn't even look at our CVs. They said, and that's the one we did. They said, we went back there. That was payback time, man. And then the guy was saying, and then this goes on like this. You must watch this. Quite fascinating.
There seems to be a lack of investigative journalism into who was actually rioting, because when a lot of us have gone round and done interviews with people, a lot of the people in Hackney and Tottenham and nationwide were saying that the people who were rioting in their areas, they didn't recognise. They weren't from their area. Yeah. They were majority white. They were actually often in their 20s to early 30s. So where's the investigative journalism into who was causing these riots, who was on the street, and who was doing it?
Yes, absolutely.
Actually, that story, maybe a true story, was used quite considerably across the media because it was used to justify the opprobrium that was felt necessary for all this insurrection in its various forms. So that story did get out. I was listening, as Greg was telling, putting his view on that, I was thinking of an excellent analysis done by one of the really best Guardian reporters, a young guy called Paul Lewis, has done a lot of work on this sort of thing. He wrote an immensely angry piece in the Campaign for Press and Broadcasting Freedom magazine about this, in which he said, and the Sky report was probably the exception, but that came later on, but there was no reporting of actually asking people why they were doing what they were doing, of interviewing them. All the reporting was pretty much like wars are reported, actually, it was entirely judgmental. Now, I'm not saying that there wasn't a case to be made. Of course there was. Terrible things happened, and contradictory things happened. But no reporter, according to Paul Lewis, went to the people who were doing it and got information from them. The who, what, when, and where, and why from them, which is the very basis of journalism, at least I learned. But it was done in an entirely finger-wagging outrage, in the way that Northern Ireland was reported, year after year after year, never explaining why, never going to people and hearing their view, however unpalatable that view. Those unpalatable views were rare, and the Sky Report must have been one of them, but they certainly weren't on the BBC and elsewhere. We had a lot of people, people had been handing out brooms, and people who were saying what you're saying, they'd come from outside. The message was, they're all bad. It's an evil. It's like after 9/11, you know, they attacked us because they're bad, they're evil, and we're good. Pretty much the same principle.